Welcome to another episode of the Hoops Fix podcast with me, your host Sam Nita, full-time British basketball advocate. And on this week's show, we have someone who has been a huge personal inspiration for me and someone who actually had a big impact on my life growing up, Greg Tanner, to tell the story of the legendary site streetball.co.uk. You know, I think for those of us that were from that era, we all know the impact that it had on the culture and basketball in this country at that time. It was huge. It was followed by everyone, and that was the place to be. So it was super interesting to kind of get into the backstory about why he set it up and kind of the levels that it got to. Before we do get into the show, obviously got to do a quick mention for our Patreon account. We are coming directly to you, our audience. If you go to patreon.com/hoopsfix, that's patreon.com/hoopsfix. There you can sign up to give as much or as little as you'd like every single month to help support the work that we're doing, to help fund interviews like this, to help our contributions to the British basketball media landscape. So please go to patreon.com/hoopsfix and sign up to support our work. Have a listen. Let me know what you think. You can drop me an email, sam@hoopsfix.com, or you can reach out to me on every single social media platform @hoopsfix. Please do give us a rating and review on iTunes if that's where you're listening. And that is enough from me. Here is this week's show with me and Greg Tanner. Greg, welcome to the show.
Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, good. It's going to be a good trip down memory lane for me today because obviously, as you probably know, streetball.co.uk was a huge part of my upbringing. I'm sure you hear people tell you all the time, like, what an impact it had on them growing up. And for me personally, it was just a massive part of my life. So I guess, you know, going into your background in kind of the early days, how did you first get into basketball?
So there was a guy at school who was in a year below me and a year above my brother. And he was born in Canada, half Canadian, and he was into basketball. He became pretty good friends with my brother, and he introduced us to NBA Jam that was shown on ITV Saturday lunchtimes, early afternoon, presented by Alton Byrd, who was sort of, you know, a BBL legend back in the day. But it was basically a highlight magazine show of NBA highlights and features, but presented by this British guy to give it American British guy, to give it a British feel. And we got into it, I think it was the 93-94 season. So Jordan had just gone, but it was like the Gary Payton, Sean Kemp era. It was the Hakeem Olajuwon era. It was, you know, it was still very exciting. And I, as someone who'd never been hugely into sport much, apart from skateboarding, all of a sudden there was this sport that was high flying and explosive and fast paced. And we just really got into it. And then from there, we like put a hoop up in my mum's driveway that drove the neighbors up the wall. And, you know, we used to play there. We didn't even fully know the rules. Like our friend who introduced us, this guy, Anthony, you know, I swear he used to say, if you held the ball above your shoulder height, you couldn't dribble it again. Like even if you hadn't dribbled it. Anyway, we played these makeshift rules. And then around this exact time, I think it was like about March 94, they built a big double basketball court near where we live. And the London Towers came down, like Martin Henlon and all his boys came down and did a little photo shoot. And we just started spending our lives at the basketball court. And there were like-minded kids in the area who did the same. And then before you knew it, that court was pretty much where we lived. And in the summer holidays, 10 in the morning to 10 at night, until the ball smacked you in the face because you couldn't catch the pass because it was too dark. That was life. So ultimately it was a school friend who was into basketball that showed us about it, and it went from there.
So were you always playing recreational, unorganised basketball? Did you end up playing sort of competitively for teams and stuff?
Oh God, no. So I mean, the first year or so of going down the basketball court, I mainly used to skateboard. I just liked being there because, you know, it was sort of a new group of friends and it was cool and people would have the stereo on, and I'd mess around on the court, but I was still mainly into skateboarding. I think it was the summer of 95 when I turned 17 that I actually started playing a bit properly. And actually it was the summer after that, 96, when me and my friend, I'd say most of the people at the court were a bit younger than us, maybe 1, 2, 3 years younger than me and my friend. And we did our A-levels in 96. So we finished for the summer, like a month before everyone else. And we got on this training thing and like I was doing squats and calf raises, and I went from like just being able to touch the hoop with my fingertips to being able to like grab it 2 hands and 360 a tennis ball. I could never dunk a proper ball because I've got tiny hands. But I got more into playing it, and then we used to occasionally go to other courts and play other kids. But I never like took it seriously. Like a lot of the guys I grew up with really wanted to make it, and some of them were really good, but I never had those ambitions. And for me, it was always fun, and I never even really worked on my game. I'd never like seriously shoot 300 jump shots or seriously do drills. Like I just messed around basically, and it was always fun, and it's a good job. I mean, I'm 5'10". I'm not the most athletic guy in the world. I think if I had ambitions of making it, I would have been gravely disappointed. But for me, it was always like a social thing and just something that I was into for fun.
And so then, obviously, there was a transition to setting up streetball.co.uk. So I guess, where did the idea first come from? How did it first materialize?
So I've always been kind of a creative person. Like I started playing guitar when I was 14. I was very heavily into music in my teenage years. I used to draw a little bit, cartoons and stuff. And so in the late 90s, when the internet started becoming a thing, I thought to myself, I want to build a website. I'd got really into like chat rooms and message boards about basketball, about hip hop, about various things. And one day I was like, I want to set up a website. So I just I had an AOL account, and you got like 20 megabytes of free space. This was like 99. And I'm like, all right, what am I going to make a website about? So I'm embarrassed to say, I basically made it about hot women and basketball. Like I had pictures of like the actresses or the pop stars at the time that I was into, and then things about basketball and little like gifs. This was years. This was 6 years before YouTube even came into existence. But I had the technology to like take a little video of Iverson crossing Jordan and make it into an AVI, and I used to write these things like, right, I'm really into crossovers and blah 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 blah. So I just started it off on this free web space. And then I thought, no, and literally I was just doing it for my own amusement. Like it was like a creative outlet, and I was just messing around. But then I thought, no, I want to focus it on basketball. And actually I had over the years, again, because I've always kind of been creative, I had over the years been filming guys at the local basketball court, but also like London Youth Games, going to events with a little Hi8 camcorder. And I thought, I've actually got quite a few cool little clips. So I'm going to focus it on basketball. And then in May 2000, I registered a domain name. Because again, I was like, and this was 2000. This was like peak.com era. Everyone was like getting on the website thing. And I literally was just doing it for fun, for a hobby. So I registered the domain name, focused it on basketball. And because I worked in television, I've always been a television news producer, I had access to like editing suites. This was really a few years before it became possible to really edit on your own PC. And, just AVI and MPEG files were huge, and the the processor speeds weren't enough. But I had access to editing equipment. So I used to go into work with my little Hi8 tapes, dump them off onto these big beta tapes that were like the professional standard back then, and edit these very rough little mixtape clips. At first, they didn't even have audio. It would be 10 seconds of someone putting the ball through someone's leg. But then it evolved into like 2-minute cut to music type things. And yeah, like it just that was the beginnings of it. But I was literally not doing. I didn't think anyone was viewing. I was doing it for my own amusement and enjoyment.
So in terms of like, I know when I started filming, I was using mini DV tapes, and that was a process. Like, you're filming, you then download the footage. Like, it took so long. So in terms of the actual process from filming because I wanted people to get the idea of the era that we're talking about, like the process of filming a game and then getting it onto a computer screen, and then getting it off a computer screen into an edit that you're going to then upload to the internet. Like, what was that process, and how laborious was it?
I'm going to say people doing video content now who weren't of that era don't know they're born. That you can film an entire thing, not have to worry about the space, clip out your little bit, upload it from your phone immediately, put all the grading and the graphics on it. So I wasn't even in the beginning shooting on mini DV. I was shooting on Hi8, the bigger tapes.
Wow.
The ones that were almost like audio cassette tapes and used to get chewed up and whatever. And because back then, file sizes, now you can buy a 1 terabyte hard drive for like £40. Back then, your computer hard drive might be 60 no, hang on, like maybe 200 megabytes. It certainly wasn't a gigabyte. I'm telling you that right now. So what I had to do was I'd get the tape and go back and watch it through with a notepad and note down time codes, like time code 106, Leon, dunk. 109, Teo, dunk. Then go back and capture just 20 seconds either side of the clip, and then you would have it. Because if you imported the whole 2-hour tape, it just wasn't physically possible. The technology wasn't there. Wow. And I remember I started buying hard drives. I go to PC World or whatever, and you buy these hard drives this big that were 200 megabytes, like a fifth of a gigabyte, and it would be like £200. So it was laborious. And then you would edit it, and you'd have to compress it a lot again, because people were on 56k dial-up internet. So you'd compress the hell out of it, end up with like a 4, 5, 6 megabyte file that would then take 3 hours to upload. And then every single person that then wanted to watch the video, and this is the story that so many people tell me, is they'll be like, yeah, I used to go on Streetball and see there's a new video. So, right click, save as, and it would be like, right, saving dunks.avi or .mpeg. And you had to wait like 3 hours. Some people would leave it overnight to download. And it's actually funny. It's funny because I remember when, it must have been about 4 or 5 years ago now, but you were doing your event, and I couldn't make it. I was at home, but I had on a big 60-inch TV the live feed of it, and it hadn't got going yet. It was just a wide shot of the court, and I was like, this is insane. Like the girl I was living with at the time, I said, this is insane. I used to have to go through this process to get a 2-minute pixelated clip up that people had to wait 3 or 4 hours to download. And now there's a guy kind of doing what I did now, and he's doing an event and he's live streaming it in HD, and I'm watching it on a 60-inch television. And that was just in probably 8 or 9 years, like the way the technology advanced. So to get back to your original question, it was a very long and laborious process.
In some ways, is the only way you were able to do it because of the fact that you worked where you worked, and so you had access to the studios. Was there any way of, like, if you wanted to do it at home, like at that time, and have some sort of editing software on your computer or whatever, like, was that possible? Or?
I would say in the first year, it would have been very hard. The year 2000, and like I had a job paying 12 grand a year. Like I did not have a lot of finances for this, so I just had like a compact Presario PC that I'd borrowed money from my nan and used to pay her back monthly, to own. And that sort of level, you couldn't really edit on your computer. And plus, I kind of learned the editing process from work. I saw how to lay shots, how to cut things together. So I would say, had I started it a couple of years later, and programs that were available on your PC, then yeah. But that first year, 2000, 2001, I had to do everything at work.
Which is what in some ways made it so unique, because you were so uniquely placed that you were pretty much the only person that sort of had that access to that type of equipment, and then also was interested in basketball in a way that you wanted to do that, right?
Yeah, but I think I was lucky in so much as it was such early days of the internet that nobody else was really on it. I had a passion for being creative, so I had the drive to start a website, to basically go into work at night and edit these videos. I had the technical skills, I'd learned from editors how to do it. I'm a journalist, so writing was good to me. I taught myself HTML and JavaScript and all that. So I was like a one-man band, whereas there were other. So, for example, I listened to your interview with Roger Hosanna the other day, and he said that they didn't have the expertise to do what I was doing, and I think that's completely fair. Like, I didn't have their history within the game, or the sort of deep roots that they did. I was just, he said streetball kind of came out of nowhere, and I would agree. I was just this kid from the suburbs who started this website that kind of blew up. So whilst I didn't have that infrastructure and history and respect within the community, I had the technical ability and the passion to be a one-man shop. Those guys, they had a website, but they didn't have someone that was super good at editing. So that's kind of how it developed into what it was. The fact that I was sort of multi-skilled and loved it.
And so that first version of streetball.co.uk that ended up online, what did that look like? And not only what did it look like what, in terms of the content that was actually on the site, but also like what were you thinking when you launched it? Like, were you thinking, I want this to grow into a thing? No, it was just like, 100%, this is cool, I enjoy it, I'm just going to stick this online.
100%. Like, I'm trying to liken it to something. Like, imagine you're into sketching and you do a sketch. You're just doing it for fun. You're not thinking. I guess things are different now. There's social media. You could put it on social media and people would be like, oh, that's cool, whatever. But you're really just doing it for yourself. I was honestly doing it purely because I as a creative outlet, 100%. And so in its original incarnation, it was all black with white text, and it had like a paragraph on the front, and it was something like, when most people think of European ballers, they think of like these 7-foot stiffs, because this was in the very early days of, Europeans making it. And they were always like some 7'1" guy called Zekov who couldn't move his feet at more than half a mile an hour. And I had seen with my own 2 eyes and had on video these amazing ballers in London, like with handles and doing dunks and stuff. And I was like, I want to show, I say I want to show the world. I was, I didn't have ambitions that anyone was watching, but I was like, I just want to represent what's going on. So I was like, we've got this scene in London, this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And I had a little bit of information about some of the basketball courts around, some little player pages that are in its original incarnation were just like me and my friends down the court. But then as I actually realized people were logging on and it got more serious, then it became about the actual players on the scene.
So what was the growth and involvement of it? Like, obviously there must have been at some point when you were like, oh, this is more than just a creative outlet, like it's getting traffic.
Oh, there were, so the defining moment of when I realized that it was a thing was I'd, at work, a website I'd been working on, we put a message board page on it. And it wasn't, again, this must have still been the year 2000. So it wasn't, within a couple of years, message boards had got quite complex. This was literally just a page where you could post a message and it would list them chronologically. And so I stole the script that we'd used for the one at work and I put it on my site. And I thought, I'll check it tonight. Maybe there'll be 3 messages. Dude, I went back that night. There were like 40 messages. And I was like, oh my God, there's people actually watching. And the people, it wasn't just like, nice. People were really engaging, so many comments from Americans like, I didn't realize y'all UK cats got down like that, respect for New York, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of that, but then also from day one, hate, people like, oh, y'all UK cats ain't shit, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then, it quickly got into the little groups of, Middlesbrough College talking shit about Ealing tornadoes and whatever. And that actually is where the community side of it started to grow, when people, various factions around London and the wider UK used to start getting into it on the message board. And it was then that I realized there's people actually logging on. They're really engaged and they're quite passionate about what we're doing. Mostly positive, but some people hating, some people using it as a forum to talk rubbish about each other. And when that happened, it motivated me to do it so much more, because before that point, I've been doing it for myself. But once I got that, it's going to sound funny, I felt I had a duty. People would be like, oh, are you going to that next event? When's the video going to be from that? And if I had previously been thinking, oh, that's long, like I might not go, I was like, I have to go. Like, I owe it to the people. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it was when I put that message board on and there were just so many comments. That was the moment where I realized it was a thing. But even in that moment, I didn't start thinking, oh, let's turn this into a business, blah, blah, blah. I was just like, well, now there's an audience, so I'm not just doing it for me, I'm doing it for them. And it like I say, it motivated me to do it more.
In terms of the timeline, so you registered the domain in 2000?
May 2000.
So you launched it in 2000. At what point did you sort of get that first version of the message board up? Like, how soon after was that, after launch?
I honestly couldn't tell you, but it would have been within 6 months.
Okay, so
sure.
It was quick. It was quick.
It was it was super quick. It was super quick. I would say a couple of things helped us. I mean, firstly, just no one else was doing it.
Yeah, but how are people discovering you?
Well, so one thing that certainly helped. I mean, so we had started just within our little Southwest London community. I'm from Southwest London. People knew about it there, and it was just starting to spread by word of mouth. But I think the thing that really put us on the map, first of all, was my brother turned up to the Rough and Ready trials in the year 2000.
And your brother Stuart Tanner, for those that don't know.
My brother Stuart Tanner, and he had a bit of a reputation. You know, people from, again, you know, around Southwest London knew he had some handles and whatever, but I don't think the wider community did. Anyway, he turned up and he just tore it up. Like, literally, people were running on the court. He was putting the ball through people's legs. People were going ape. And Rough and Ready gave us a shout out on their website. They were like, you know, the trials were great, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, the man of the hour was Stuart Tanner. Oh, and he's down with this new website, streetball.co.uk. So I would say that was a key thing that then exposed us to a much bigger audience. And then once everyone else was logging on, you know, everybody then wanted to start being on those highlights themselves, so they could show everybody else. So that's when it started gaining traction outside of our little group of friends, to actually the basketball community started becoming aware of it. And,
you know, in terms of, like, obviously there's the online side, but in terms of the offline side, you know, when you were showing up to games and, you know, camera in hand, was it to the point where, you know, people knew who you were, people then start putting on a show because they knew the camera was there and everything else?
Yeah, definitely. That evolved. One of the Westminster Warrior guys, who always used to be in a crowd, I live in Dubai now, and he was out in Dubai a few weeks ago, a guy called Luke, and he used to be one of the crowd at Mobley Sports Centre up in, like, Northwest. And, you know, we were out drinking and reminiscing about the old days. He was like, Greg, people used to act up so much when you were there with your camera, like not just the players, like in the crowd as well. So they definitely did. And it was mad that I'd say by 2001, I'd say within a year or so, we could rock up to places as far north as, you know, Nottingham or whatever, and you could see people nudging them like, that's streetball.co.uk. And it was quite mad, and one of the maddest and proudest moments for me was one of the events. It got to a point where, you know, the guys would be signing autographs. You know, like, people would be coming up like, oh yeah, and a kid came over to me with his ball, and he said, "Are you Greg Tanner?" I said, "Yeah," and he said, "Can you sign my ball?" And I thought, that's so cute. Like, I'm just the little guy with the camera, like, you know, the players are the stars, but it really just made me think, like, wow, this is just blown up to a point where kids are coming and asking the guy that runs the website for their autograph.
When you talk about how big it did actually get, I know that, you know, in the past we've spoken about sort of the numbers that you were doing. What sort of numbers, like, in terms of visitors and stuff, like, what access to analytics did you have, and kind of, when you talk about the numbers, the size of the audience, what sort of figures are we talking about?
So when it was really blowing up at its height, which I would say was probably 2003-04, to my knowledge, like, Google Analytics and that didn't exist at that point. So you used to have to go to, like, Webmaster Tools websites and get, like, these free counters and stuff. Anyway, I paid for a month in December 2003 because it was getting to a point where people were telling me to quit my job and do the website. And at that point, I didn't want to. I had a stable job that I enjoyed. It would have been a huge risk. But I was like, look, I just want to get the stats. And by this point, I had to change host about 4 or 5 times because host couldn't deal with the bandwidth I was doing because of the video downloads. All of these hosts, it used to be like, you know, unlimited bandwidth, and then after 2 months, they'd be like, I'm sorry, we can't handle your traffic, because no one was doing video like that. So anyway, December 2003, I paid for like a month or 2 months. And I was astounded. We were doing like 1 million page impressions, 100,000 visitors. And this was 2003. This was before people were going on the internet with their phone. This was before social media. So that really gave me an insight into sort of traffic we were doing.
And the thing is, you weren't just trailblazing in the UK, but globally, right? You had a global audience.
Yeah, massive. Probably 60% of our traffic came from outside the UK. A lot of it from North America and USA and Canada. But then, yeah, loads everywhere.
And what was the state of the internet basketball scene back then? Like the other, Hoops TV was around back then.
So Hoops TV kind of started around the same time I did, and they, I remember reading they were run by Foot Action, that was the company behind Am1, or Footlocker, anyway, one of those ones, and they had a $20 million startup funding, and I remember thinking, okay, it's a good website, but I'm doing this on my J's with no money. Is that really $20 million better than what I'm doing? No, I certainly didn't think so. So, and that quickly folded. That came and went pretty quickly. And then after a few years of streetball getting big, some copycat ones started springing up here and there. But yeah, no. So, at first, it was really the.
What were the other sites that people were going to, like the independent sites? I mean, not the ESPNs of the world, but like the smaller independent sites that were sort of covering streetball and basketball back then.
I'm trying to think. There was one called Streetballers, AZ on the end, .net, that was run by some guys in Florida that used to be in contact with me a lot. Dime 55, this other one that got set up by some guys. They were either in the States or Canada. Nautic got set up by a couple of film students in Canada, and they didn't really focus on sort of maintaining a website, but they dropped 2 mixtapes, and because A, they had some really good players, like some really flashy players, but B, they were film students and they had access to like full-on equipment and they knew what they were doing. Their mixtapes were like legendary, and again, I used to speak to them all the time. There were a few guys in the UK, streetballzone.tk, run by some kid called Josh up in like somewhere way up north or whatever. Various ones sprung up, and then I guess probably the main one that sprung up in the UK was Streetball Extreme. Towards the end of, just as I was sort of tailing out of the scene, they sort of came on and had a little shine for a quick minute.
How much do you think? Well, I mean, obviously the era that you were in was so perfectly timed because that was the height of streetball, right? Yeah. How much do you think that played into it? And I guess for people that maybe the younger people that weren't around during that era, how massive was streetball as a culture?
It was big. I mean, I would say, but even before the Am1 mixtape, we were into handles because that was the handles era. Iverson and Marbury got drafted in '96, so I was 18, and I remember. You couldn't really watch Georgetown games or whatever on TV, but there was this video VHS service called Pontel, based somewhere in Europe, like the Netherlands or something, and you could order NCAA and NBA games. And a friend of mine used to order the Georgetown games, and so we were watching. We just heard, and again, this wasn't through the internet; it was just word of mouth. We'd somehow heard there was this guy called Allen Iverson at Georgetown, and he had these amazing moves. So we used to watch all of that. So we got into handles then. And I had friends that like perfected that crossover. Like shout out to Kenny Alakatan and Davu Fon. Like people were perfecting the crossover. And I would lie in bed at night dreaming of doing a crossover. So we were on the handles thing. But then the Am1 mixtape came out in '99, and that probably was the motivation probably for me to start streetball.co.uk, because I was effectively kind of doing a UK version of the Am1 mixtape. And it's funny, when I first watched the Am1 mixtape, I didn't really like it. It was so short, it was so grainy. I wasn't really feeling it, but what it did remind me of was all the skateboard videos I used to watch when I was a little bit younger, because skateboarding was always my thing. And it was basically the same thing, highlights of flashy stuff cut to music. It was a very similar thing. But after a few views of Am1 Mixtape 1 and Skip to My Lou and everything, I started to get it, and I was like, this is cool. And then other people started doing it. And then, for your younger viewers that don't know, it went from legitimate, like, ballers who were flashy to, by the time Am1 Mixtape 3 came out in 2001, this guy Hot Sauce came along. And I'm not going to lie, like, the first few times we watched that, we were running around the house screaming. Like, literally, he was doing things no one had even thought about. And we were running around the house screaming. But I think as we got into that era, it started getting in a little bit ridiculous, like just blatant carries, blatant double dribbles. And that side of things I wasn't really on. But the earlier stuff definitely inspired the start of streetball.co.uk.
how much, I still get blowback now for posting too many dunks and crossovers and not focusing on more fundamentals and stuff. I have no doubt that was the same thing back then. Like, how much blowback were you getting from the establishment or sort of, fundamental people that were like, well, you're ruining the game, you're promoting the wrong things?
Well, I didn't really deal, certainly for the first 4-5 years. I didn't deal with the establishment. I didn't care. I didn't care for what was then NBL. I didn't care about the BBL. I didn't care about the establishment. I was just covering what was going on the courts, what was going on in the summer events, and what was happening on the streets. And I think that's why people liked it so much. If I'd been covering, I did occasionally, cover NBL games or whatever, but that's not exciting to a foreign audience. Guys in America aren't going to log on for that, but they're going to log on to see these guys in Europe like throwing alley-oops and like dunking on people. But in terms of blowback from the establishment, yeah, I certainly heard that some of the biggest names, the big coaches were telling their players, don't watch that bullshit. Basically, no one ever really said it directly to me. Well, people used to put it on the message boards, like, you're not fundamental, blah, 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 blah. But I was told by players that coaches had said, don't worry about what streetball.co.uk is doing, for sure.
And what about blowback from players that were on the wrong side of highlights?
Yeah, there were times where I was threatened not to put things up, and there were times where I didn't put things up, for fear of reprisal. I remember there was one event, though, up in Durham, where everybody had, if you competed, everyone had signed a waiver, and that included you waived the right to be filmed. And one of the guys on our team, a guy called Darren Clark, who's like as tall as me, windmilled on this guy in a game. And he found my email. He was like, I'm going to sue you if you put it up, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, mate, if you played in that thing, you had to sign a waiver. Sorry. But then I remember. I'm not going to say any names, but there was one guy from London that got crossed and fell horribly. I wasn't there, but someone sent me the clip. I'm not sure how they would have sent it. I don't know if they emailed it or whatever. And everyone in that community was talking about it, and they were like, Greg's gonna put it online. And he told me, he was like, bro, if you put that online, you're giving me money or you're getting banged. And I just couldn't I couldn't deal with the drama. So yeah, there were things that I didn't put online, for sure.
And in terms of the wider sort of English basketball scene, kind of what was going on with the game at that point, that kind of, I don't know, things that you played on or played a role in kind of the rise and growth of streetball.co.uk?
What, like, establishment things were going on?
I just mean the general state of the game, like the Pro League, like National League, like, obviously the fact that streetball culture was a bigger thing. Yeah. I almost think that people at that time were more interested in learning moves than they were in trying to sign a pro contract in some ways,
The scene was very different. So, I mean, I haven't got a lot to say about what the BBL, what the NBL was doing at the time, because I wasn't really focused on it. But in terms of the streetball scene and the summer basketball scene, it was vibrant. And there's actually so much we could discuss here, because it got to a point where I was putting on an event. Roger and Hosanna were doing Ballers Evenings every Thursday. That was a weekly thing that everyone went to. Summer League, stroke Pro-Am. They started doing an event at Brighton. I helped do some events in Brighton. You had, Rough and Ready were kind of, I think the last one they did was 2003, and they'd taken 2002 off. So they were kind of just at the tail end of their existence, but they were still players on the scene. You had Narmo, who runs Midnight Madness. He started Midnight Madness in 99. This was before it got taken to like the big level when Nike fully backed it in 2005, but Narmo was still doing events. And there was animosity in the scene. There was beef in the scene, 100%. And it got to a point, everybody wanted the prime weekends in the summer to do their events. And it got to a point where there was so much infighting and drama that Steve Alexander, who was the Basketball England London rep, basically used to call a meeting in January at South Bank University where we'd all come in this room. And, some people hated me, like proper hated me. And we try and work out dates and do so in a manner that wasn't going to cause too much drama. But it was funny. There were these different factions that didn't get on and had problems with each other for various reasons. But in terms of what that for the community, it was thriving.
Yeah.
Like I say, you know, every Thursday, Crystal Palace, 3, and then eventually I think it became 4 courts where you'd go from kids to guys back from NCAA scholarships, NBA, occasionally NBA players. So that would be a regular thing. You'd have the pro-am that, you know, everyone would be looking to get involved in. I was doing events in Brighton. Roger started doing events in Brighton. Narmo was putting on things. Rough and Ready were here and there. So there was just so much going on. And that's before you start factoring in these random 3-on-3s, you know, out in the country or whatever that we used to get invited to and go and play in. Now, I've not really been on the UK basketball scene for a few years now, but as far as I can tell, that kind of summer of just wall-to-wall hoops and events doesn't appear to exist anymore.
Yeah. Why do you think it has wound down?
So I would say partly, so as you referred to, in the streetball era, it was the thing. You know, it was cool. It was all about it being outdoors, highlights. You know, the vibe, the culture part of it. But as you know, all fads come and go. And I think as it started fading out and becoming a little bit too mad and people doing too many tricks, what then became the next wave was, it's not about going to these 3-on-3s. It's about, you know, what pro scouting camp in Europe are you getting invited to? Or if you're looking at the States, you know, are you playing in an ABCD camp? Or, you know, what pro teams are looking at you? What academies in Europe are looking at you? And people then looked down on these guys just in the street working on their crossover or their 360. So it really went from being that's the shit to nah, unless basketball's taking you somewhere, unless you're getting paid for it, then it's a waste of time. So that was, there were many reasons why I kind of got out of doing it, but it was partly, you know, the wave had been and gone.
Do you think that I think one of the other things that always astounds me when people talk about that kind of era is just the amount of commercial interest there was, like the amount of partners of people that just, you know, are not involved with the game at all anymore. When you talk about streetball.co.uk sort of directly, were you working with a lot of brands? Did you find there were a lot of brands sniffing around with money?
Yeah. At various points. So I would say once I got to about 2002, then I had the likes of Nike start getting involved. And there were various years where, you know, I got paid thousands by brands. You know, I remember there was one campaign in 2005. Reebok were doing a Iverson campaign. They paid us like $7,000 for a month to take, you know, for a site takeover. You know, Nike used to pay me when Midnight Madness, when Nike really got behind Midnight Madness, and you know, you went up and down the country, and it became the biggest thing for a few years in summer basketball. You know, Nike were paying me to film those events, put the clips up, to the point where by that point I had quit my job. I quit my job in 2004 to kind of juggle being a freelance news producer with all this basketball stuff, because the basketball stuff was blowing up so much. And plus I moved to a job that I really wasn't feeling. So I gave it 6 months, left it, and it was a single best decision I ever made. So I was you know, juggling these two things. But yeah, you know, here and there, the problem was it was only ever here or there. It'd be like 1 month, bang, you know, Nike or Reebok or whatever. But what you would make every month from your little Google ads or your little other things here and there would be enough to pay the bills and maybe finance a trip, take the guys to a tournament in Leeds or whatever. But I couldn't live off it. It was never like a money spinner. But for sure, there were people putting money in here and there. And again, you know, going back to when you were talking to Roger the other day, I mean, he did a great job. You know, he had PlayStation backing him for ages. He had the RAF backing him. He brought in a lot of partners. So again, I know you do your event, and obviously, you know, you bring in partners, but yours is just kind of one event. Whereas back then there was a summer. I used to put a schedule on the website of like July this, August this, and every single weekend there'd be stuff going on, and a lot of it, sponsored.
When you talk about sort of balancing your regular job with streetball.co.uk, how were you doing it with the two, and what kind of hours were you putting in?
So I was lucky. So I'm a television news producer, and I was lucky in so much as I had, because I'd worked in the industry for about 5 years by the time I quit, I knew people that had gone to Sky News, ITV News and whatever, and they knew I was good at what I did. So I would be offered, if I wanted to, I could work every single day, basically. So I would effectively work full time doing the news thing, and then when the summer came along and I knew where events were, or I knew that I was going to get X amount of money from Nike, I'd really scale back the amount of work that I said yes to. So again, it would have, I know, Hoops Fix for you is 100% your grind, and I can't even imagine how tough that must be. But I was lucky in so much as I had a really good fallback. I had a really good bread and butter plan that was the news producing, and then as and when I knew basketball things were coming up, I would just reduce that to leave myself more open for that. But I will admit there a lot of times basketball things would crop up last minute. So I'd have to either basically work a whole day. There were days where I did a 10-hour shift at Sky News and then drove to Birmingham and stayed up all night filming Midnight Madness, and then probably nearly died driving home. But I was putting in the grind. The funniest one was when Kobe. By this point, actually, I'd stopped doing streetball.co.uk. But when Kobe and the Lakers came over in 2009, and Nike called me a few days before, probably 5 or 6 days before, and were like, "Greg, we're doing a Foot Locker event. Can you interview Kobe in front of all these guys?" And I literally turned around to I was meant to be working that weekend at Sky, and I literally turned around to the person that was in charge of weekends, and I was like, "I'm not even going to make an excuse. I'm not coming in this weekend. I'm interviewing Kobe Bryant. Sorry, mate." So I was in a fortunate position that I had this regular source of income that I could rely on and scale up or scale back depending on what basketball things came along. And there were times, 2006-07, I went away for 6 months to produce a weekly basketball show. That was my full-time job for 6 or 7 months. Some summers I'd take 2 months off, because between what Nike were paying me and what other people were putting in for other things, I could afford not to do the day job for a couple of months. So I was very lucky in so much as I had flexibility, basically.
Did you ever end up having to take money to do campaigns that you didn't necessarily want to do and you didn't feel representative of the brand, or could you kind of stay away from that?
No, I don't think so. Big campaigns we did were for Iverson, with Nike. Obviously, I was helping them promote Midnight Madness, and I was fully behind that. I did some of the LeBron James campaigns for them. Battlegrounds, they did a big Battlegrounds push in 2004, I think it was. I was fully behind that. Nike Freestyle in 2001. Again, looking back on it now, it's kind of played out now, but at the time it was hot and it was cool. I don't feel like I ever sold out at any point, but then I didn't get any offers that would have been like a sellout thing. Pretty much everyone that came to me, because my streetball.co.uk was so niche. We were, they call it a vertical in advertising. We were so niche that anyone coming to us was really trying to target the urban basketball audience. So they weren't going to come to me with bullshit, because they knew that wouldn't fly with that audience. So I was fortunate in so much as pretty much every campaign, every big campaign that came along, I was completely clear in my conscience with it.
When you talk about players, how did that sort of part of it come about? Because for me, growing up with my friends, obviously, your Teos and Leon Bernard and Stuart Tanners and Pierre and whoever else, they were like our sort of mini celebrities or whatever that we'd look up to and be like, "Do you see what they did? And they did this and they did that." Like, you said that it started with your friends, and obviously at that, it branched out. You had like sort of junior streetball.co.uk guys, and you were taking teams and taking them to tournaments and stuff. Kind of, what was the evolution of sort of the selection of the players and sort of putting together, like, I guess, faces of streetball.co.uk?
Well, in the early days, as we started getting known, I knew like Pierre, Henry Fontaine and Ryan Cadigan and those guys, Philip Perry, because they played at the Chessington Wildcats. That was like our local thing. My brother played on the team, so I got to kind of know them, and obviously they were like highlights every week. Then I'd go and watch other teams here and there. I think in 2001 is when I started going to North London to watch. I can't remember the name of the team that Teo was playing on, but I'd seen him at a few summer events, like just dunking on everyone, and I was like, I've got to go and see this guy more regularly. And then I got to, obviously he's in the clips, and we got to know each other, and he was then on board. So when an event came up, he'd be the first person I'd text or phone. I'd be like, there's this event, do you want to come? Like I'm paying, like I wasn't paying him a fee, but I'd be like, accommodations on me, I'll drive, whatever. So yeah, just by getting out to events. But then because streetball was getting known and people would see me at all these things and know I was the guy that was doing it, I just developed relationships with the players, and the players were keen to be on it. It really got to a point where people wanted to be on there. So I didn't have to convince them like, oh, do you want to come and play for my team? They were on it because they wanted to be in the clips and being talked about.
And when you talk about the different tournaments that you were traveling to, like obviously there were some smaller ones, you're going down like all sorts of random places in the countryside and stuff. Were you always winning, or were you just getting highlights coming out, like kind of, because that was the thing, is you had a mix of, yeah, they were flashy, but actually they were legit basketball players as well, right?
So when we first started, and this speaks to the evolution of my mindset and also the way basketball went. When we first started, I was just like highlights. I don't care if we win, like, which I know sounds terrible, but all people were logging on because they wanted to see an alley-oop, they wanted to see a reverse, they wanted to see a crossover. So I remember we got invited to the Hosanna Pro-Am in, I think it was 2000. I think it was like within a few months of me starting the website. And we went up against a team that had Rico Alderson, who was one of the most feared players in the BBL at the time, Rob Sargent, who was like one of the top UK guys, Jason Seaman, who was like one of the big American BBL guys, and they thrashed us. And so I think in the beginning we were just like these upstarts who just had, some guys who could dunk, some guys who had handle, and we were kind of disregarded. And again, I think Roger was speaking to that in your podcast the other week. We came out of nowhere, and we weren't steeped in the basketball history that Hosanna was, or the Rough and Ready was. But we were providing a product that people loved these highlights. But then as we evolved, I realized, okay, if we want to be taken seriously, we got to win. So I would try to put together teams of guys who could do both. So Teo could dunk on everyone, but he could get to the rim and score, and he could be a streaky shooter as well. Then you'd think, right, I need a big man, I need a guard, and it became, we then started going to those tournaments to win. And again, a funny part of the evolution was, in the early years, we used to turn up and everyone would be rooting for us because they loved streetball and we were the underdogs and we were the new thing. But after 3 or 4 years of winning everything, we turn up and they would root for anyone against us, because it's like, oh no, streetball are going to come and win again. And I think a lot of people thought that we were like really arrogant and stuff. It's funny, I actually so many times in the streetball years like met people and they'd be like, you're really safe, actually. I thought you were going to be a dick. And I don't know why. Maybe that's just because of the way we were coming off, like, oh, we got all these highlights, we won this thing, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, we went from being the underdog, the people that got beaten, to the winners. Everyone liked us because we were new, and then you go past the tipping point and you win everything, so the people want the new underdog.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
When you talk about sort of peak streetball.co.uk moments, specifically not things that you've done personally, obviously afterwards, but actual streetball.co.uk moments, there was obviously crazy stuff that you were involved with, over the years. I remember you going abroad to different tournaments and stuff, and kind of, what are some of your favourite memories of the website and experiences that you had with the guys? Or that you had filming, doing your own thing.
Yeah, well, I would say one moment that stands out was, like I say, when I put the message board on there and I realised there was an audience. In terms of like some of the highlights, the first big event that happened down in Brighton in 2002, the 4-on-4, was amazing. This guy that worked for a record label down there called George hit me up and he was like, he'd seen that, we used to go down there, bring some guys, scrimmage, play, get some highlights, go home, put up a video. He was like, I've got a budget, I want to do a tournament. So I helped him out, and anyway, the weather was perfect. So many people, Brighton, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers do, but on a nice day, if there's an event going on at the court, passing traffic stops, then people stop to see what the other people are looking at, and it's not just on the court level, up on the street level, people start looking down. So there must have been, a few hundred people around this court at any given point. The weather was amazing, the guys were getting highlights, but the highlight that stands out was we ended up, I think it was the finals. We beat a team that had a bunch of BBL guys, like Randy Duck, who was like one of the top BBL guys. We beat them. Shout out to Chris Jeremiah, who scored like 7 in a row and went ham. And then I think it was the finals. We ended up playing the local Brighton team with Bud Johnson, this French guy called Julian, and like all their guys. So obviously, although we were still in the early days of streetball, everybody wanted the Brighton guys. And the highlight that stands out for me, and anyone of a certain age will remember it, it was near the end of the game, and I was under the hoop. I was filming under the hoop that we were scoring on, and Teo stole the ball, I think, and he just comes on a fast break, and I can see him and Julian, this French guy who had crazy hops, I can see him converging, and you just hear me saying, flush that shit, bang. Like, he packed it on him so hard, and the thing that made it so brilliant was Julian, who went to block it, ended up hanging on the rim, and everyone just rushed him, like got in his face. Teo was screaming, everyone was going mad. So in terms of like highlights that stand out, that was one. I would say the first Street All-Star game that I did, even though the crowd wasn't huge, there was maybe 300 people. It went beyond my expectations of highlights, and I think everybody else's. Like, I put together so many people who I knew were going to bring highlights, but it was just on another level. There were just so many amazing things, and like Chidi, one of our big guys, he literally did the elbow dunk in a game. This was 2002, right? People weren't doing that stuff back then, and people came from abroad for that game. And I'll never forget one email from a kid, I think in Germany or France or something. And he said that was the best day of my life. So, that day and then getting that email, were obviously highlights. I went abroad for things. Like, I remember going to K54 for the first time in 2006. I'm going to go out there and say it was me that brought it to the UK's attention, because it like no one really knew about it before that. But I went out, and like just the hype, and this was before it really, really got big and like moved to by the Eiffel Tower and everything. This was when it was still in the hood, but that was amazing, like the vibe and everything, and being abroad. So yeah, I mean, there's and then even like the nights out, when you go to a 5-on-5 in Leeds, and with like 7 players, and then you all go out that night. And some of the days down in Plymouth, I knew a lot of guys that used to go to Marjohn's, the university down there, and we had some big nights out in Plymouth. So yeah, from the on-court stuff to the off-court stuff for a good 5 years, half a decade, that was kind of my life. And yeah, I got to do some amazing things.
You mentioned it there. I did want to talk about the events and obviously Street All Stars. So how many years did that end up running? What year did it first run, and kind of what was your idea behind doing it?
So I first did it in 2002. So by that point, we'd become established enough that everyone knew us. I knew all the players. I'd been thinking about doing an event, and then it came out on the grapevine that Rough and Ready wasn't going to be on that year. So not for 1 minute was I thinking I was going to put on an alternative to Rough and Ready, but I did think there's room for some sort of like just like exhibition thing. So that was the reason why I started it, and it was and that game literally was just about highlights. It didn't matter who won, honestly, and that's what the people were coming for. They were coming to see the guys that they'd seen in all the videos and doing it live in the flesh. So I did it. I think I did 5. The third one was the biggest. 2004 was the biggest. Like, it was absolutely packed. And again, it was a great one. There were mad highlights, like court getting rushed so many times. But then the next year, that was the fourth one, the 7/7 bombings happened. And so many of the kids that used to come to my events were from out of town. Like, they used to travel from up north or out in the country and even abroad. And they were young as well. It was quite a young audience. I mean, I myself in 2005 turned 27, but I would say most of the kids coming to the event were probably like 16 to 20. And when 7/7 happened, and then 21/7 a couple of weeks later, and then they shot John Charles de Menezes at Stockwell, everyone outside of London thought that London was literally being bombed every day. So the crowd was much smaller that fourth year, and it's because so many people didn't come from out of town. And then I think I did 2 more after that, but 2006 was my last one, because 2007, well, A, I was kind of falling out of love with it. B, I was thinking I've got to focus on my career. And 2007, I met a girl that I ended up getting very serious with, and that was like the final nail in the coffin for streetball.co.uk. So yeah, it ran basically for like the website, I would say, for 7 years, but it was that first 5 that it was like everything. It was all consuming.
Did you ticket the event? Was it a profitable thing, or?
I loosely ticketed it. Loosely, I mean, I'm sure you know what it's like. Like, so many people just want to get in for free, and I'm just, I wasn't doing it as a money spinner at all, and it didn't cost that much money. I mean, it cost less. In all honesty, it cost less than £1,000 to put it on. It was just a little sports hall. I wasn't doing it at Brixton Rec like you, with bleachers and floor prints and everything. Yeah. I got given free kit by AM1 or K1X. I got a good discount rate, £200 for the gym for the day. Paid the sound man and the DJ $200. It really wasn't that expensive. So I didn't really care if people were getting in for free. All I cared about was it looking rammed, because obviously if you go back and watch the videos of the third one, it was so rammed and people were so hyped and people kept coming on the court that I didn't care if we were taking a loss on the event, because I knew that the footage was going to drive so much interest. And
when you talk about, like, do you have so again, this was pre-YouTube, do you know like your biggest grossing video in terms of views and stuff? Like, is there any that stick out? The one of the pages that I really remember is you had a page where you broke down Iverson's crossover on Jordan, and you broke down the Sham God as well.
Sham God. You see, I'm gonna sound mad arrogant, but I honestly think I brought the Sham God really to the world's attention. Like, people knew he was doing it. Niche people, when he was at Providence. And again, my boy Perry used to order his Pontel tapes, and we used to put the VHS in and frame by frame, like, throw it out, pull it back. Like, I never really got it, but other people did. But it was one of the things that I put on the website, and I used to have so many. I used to get hundreds of emails a week, honestly. Like, where did you get that Sham God? I've never seen that. How do you do that? And so now I find it funny that in the last few years, it's kind of had a resurgence. There was a documentary about him like a year or two ago, and I was honestly sitting there thinking, would the Sham God be quite as well known if for 5 years or so was the most popular streetball website in Europe and possibly even in the world hadn't been like talking about it so much? I do genuinely wonder that. Maybe I'm trying to take too much credit, but I genuinely think like I brought that to a lot of people's attention that never watched those Providence games, never would have seen it if they hadn't seen it on streetball.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% had never heard of it or seen it until I saw it on your website, and then of course then you go out in the playground and you're trying to do it, and you're watching back the clip, and you're just like, I mean, yeah, there was so much stuff that that had an impact on kind of the things that I was doing. I remember you had one clip, I think it was with Stuart, and it was just on a playground against just one guy, just a one-on-one, and he kind of went like that and then round the player's back and then span around.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I think that was someone else that did that move. A guy called Elliot that did that move.
That one, yeah. And I remember then I called a friend over and I was like, let's go one-on-one or whatever. And I did it on him, and he was just like, what the hell did you just do? And I just felt like the most accomplished basketball player ever. all my life goals were met. But yeah, it was crazy. The footage was just unreal. Do you have like all the tapes still, the archive? Like, where is it? Because obviously you can. obviously ahead of this podcast, I googled and sort of tried to dig up some stuff, and there's not that much. There's stuff on YouTube, obviously, which people have put up mixtapes, but I know that it's not all of it.
No.
But yeah, like, do you have it anywhere on hard drives and stuff?
I think I do. I think I probably got a lot of it. I have hard drives like under my bed in Dubai that I don't actually have cables to connect. And every now and then someone will ask me for some footage and I think, I must go and get that cable. But then for one reason or another, I don't. The tapes, you know what? So much of it is on the hard drives, plural. But in terms of the tapes, I think when I left the UK, I think I might have thrown them out.
Really?
I think I might have made that decision because they're certainly not with me in Dubai. So yeah, some of those tapes might have been lost forever.
Because one of the things the Google search does bring up is like your free serve account, which is like there's like an archive version of the site on there. Like it's one of the early sites.
Yeah.
And it had links to videos on there, and I clicked on, but none of them worked. So I assume that the hard files are.
Yeah, I mean, I'll send you some of the old ones. You can. Do you know the website archive.org?
Yeah.
So if you use that, you can look at snapshots of it in time, and somehow some of those links to the AVIs and MPEGs work somehow.
Yeah.
So yeah, some of the old 2001 clips are still there.
Set up a YouTube channel just dedicated to all that archive. I think so many people would love to see it. There's definitely, because there was one Brighton clip that I've always tried to find and I can never find it, which I remember so clearly from when I was young, like it was a mixtape down in Brighton. But yeah, there was just so many moments. In terms of like the players, like who are sort of the bigger names that stick out to you and the ones that you've profiled. And I guess even now, like, it must be quite sort of nice for you because there's a lot of guys that you profiled when they were young, Matthew Bryan and Manning, there's footage of them that are now, playing professionally, earning a lot of money representing Great Britain or, playing in the BBL now or wherever else. Like, kind of who are the names that stick out for you?
Well, yeah, in terms of people that have made it, Matthew was one. I remember him when he was 13 at Crystal Palace on the sideline. I mean, he was always tall, but he was too young to really play with the big boys. But very quickly, by the time he was 14, 15, he was playing with the main guys. And then, he obviously blew up. He was with Isaiah Thomas at Washington, and he's played all around the world now. So that was quite mad seeing him. And he used to play for our junior teams. Justin Robinson as well. He used to play for our junior teams, and you look at him, MVP of the BBL, and those guys are killing it. But I would say like the main faces of the site were older guys kind of my age or a little bit younger. So your Teo Elijahs, your Leon Bernards, Pierre's younger than me, but Pierre was one of the guys. Ryan was one of the guys. I'm trying to think, Jimmy from the crowd. How can I forget Jimmy from the crowd? So Jimmy was, one of us Kingston boys that just came out the crowd one day and did a move in the game, and then that was it. He was part of our crew, and he's still one of my best friends to this day. Those guys, I guess didn't make it fully professionally, but they did lots of stuff with basketball. They did a lot of jobs for photo shoots and stuff. Like when FIBA decided 8 years ago or so that they wanted to push 3-on-3, they called me, and all those guys got paid to do the original photo shoot promoting FIBA 3-on-3. So although a lot of the guys didn't necessarily make it professionally, they made some money out of the streetball gigs for sure.
How big of a role do you think your brother played as Stuart Tanner? I think he, for me, obviously had the reputation and was featured in a lot of magazines, and there was a whole Devin Harris thing, which was actually post streetball.co.uk, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was 2008. Yeah.
2008. But yeah, like how much of a role do you think he played in the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, he played a huge role. He in the earliest incarnations, most of the website, most of the best little highlights I had were of him. So he was certainly at first like the guy on there that everybody watched. And yeah, the fact 100%, so many people used to say, the fact he was this white boy from the suburbs definitely made it stick out more. Do you know what I mean? Like, it made it added a sort of extra layer to it. So yeah, 100%. In the early days, he was the focus, and like I say, when he tore up the Rough and Ready trials in 2000, and they gave him and us the shout out, that really helped put us on the map. But Stuart sort of fairly early-ish on sort of became less involved and didn't really want to be involved for one reason or another. But certainly early on, he was the face and the star. Yeah.
And so when you ended up kind of winding it down, like, was there a definitive point where it's like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore, or was it just slowly, gradually over time you started losing interest? Like, what were the reasons behind it? Everyone, I always see anytime you talk about it on Facebook or whatever, there's just all these comments, bring it back.
Yeah.
Like, why did you sort of bring it to a close?
Okay, right. Multiple reasons. So one, as we've discussed, I felt the whole streetball vibe had been and gone. Jump the shark, to use the phrase. That wave had been and gone, and I felt I'd taken it as far as I wanted to. If I had been more business minded about it, I maybe could have made it more profitable, maybe could have turned it into more of a job. But I was never doing it for the money. It got to a point where, yes, I was trying to get some money out of it because it was part of the way I earn my living. But it was partly that I was like, right, I've taken it about as far as I can. This will make you laugh. I didn't start drinking until I was 27. So in all the early days of streetball.co.uk, I was never out. I wasn't at the pub. I wasn't at the club. I wasn't going out. I was filming and I was staying up late editing videos. I began drinking, funnily enough, on a streetball trip. Me, Teo, and Pierre went over to Munich in the summer of 2005. We were the guests of K1X, this big German sports brand who are pretty huge in Europe, actually. And they paid for everything, they put us up. And the night we got there, or the second night we were there, they took us to this club, P1. It's like, P1. It's like the number one club in Munich. And they were pouring a vodka. And I was like, no. And they basically peer pressured me into drinking. And I just had the most amazing time. And I thought, why have I not been doing this all my life? So in all seriousness, in all the early years of doing a website, I didn't drink. And I focused everything on streetball.co.uk. But once I started drinking, I started going out. I was going to games less. I was less inclined to stay up all night on my computer. So that was a factor. I felt I needed to focus more on my actual career. So that was a factor. And then, in 2007, I met a girl who I ended up spending like 4 years with. And my previous girlfriend had just got ignored. I lived with her for 2 years, and sorry, Amanda, but she basically got ignored because I was 24/7 doing streetball. But then once I got with this girl Taz, I was like, right, I want to spend my time with her and getting pissed. So streetball gradually took a bit of a back seat. And actually, what happened was around that time, I for 7 months full time, I worked on a project for UK TV, making a weekly basketball show primarily focused around the EuroLeague because they got the rights to the EuroLeague. And through that, I met a guy. He was running the commercial side of it for UK TV. And I said, look, I'm going to stop doing streetball. And he thought that would have been such a waste. So he was like, well, why don't we turn it into like a more general, wider basketball website where we can still write about stuff and whatever, but you don't have to be going to games every week. So I ended up directing streetball.co.uk to a very similar looking website called Basketball 24/7. But my heart was never really in that. I did streetball because it was cool, and it was like it was at its peak a movement. It really was like kind of a movement. Just doing a website writing about what's going on in the NBA that week, I wasn't on it.
Wasn't about it.
So I phased out of that, but still plenty of basketball gigs came along after that, but they weren't like necessarily website related. I worked at the Olympics. I did various things for Nike, so I still did a lot of basketball stuff, but in terms of running a basketball website, basically phased it out in 2007, I would say.
Because there was one point in like 2010, 2011 where you talked about you were going to bring it back.
Yeah,
there was a little landing page went up saying coming soon, and
I ended up I'm starting to sound like an alcoholic, but I ended up going for a drink with a guy, James Fenimore, Big Fen, who's done quite a lot of things in basketball. And we were reminiscing about the days, and he was like, look, we can bring it back. And, he he has experience of doing events, and he's got, backing behind him. And for a minute, I was quite serious. I was like, you know what, we could do this. But for one reason or another, I was like, I wouldn't have been able to give it the time or the passion that I had before, really. And I felt that I would do it a disservice. I didn't want to bring it back half-assed, if you get me.
Do you have any regrets about the Streetball UK days? Like, if you were to go back and replay it, is there anything that you would do differently? Is there any part of you said you weren't very commercially minded about it? Do you think, if I'd gone hard, I could have made it a thing, and it could be my full-time thing? Like,
you're right. If I definitely think if I had been more business-minded about it, I probably could have made it a thing. But do I regret not doing that? No, because I've always enjoyed what was kind of side career, and now it's my full-time career, and I've done well for it. So I don't really regret it. Like, I know of a few other people, and I'm not including you in this, but I've known a few other people that have done a basketball thing, and they don't necessarily have like a good career that they can fall back on, so they put everything into trying to make that a thing. Whereas because I was fortunate enough to have this other career, I never had, whilst I had the passion and the drive to do it for the people and for the content, I wasn't like, I need to pay my bills. I've got to hustle and get on it. So could I have done it differently? Yes, 100%. Do I regret not doing it differently? I don't think so.
The other thing, I did want to talk about some of the stuff you've done since Streetball UK. It's that's the one that everyone always talks about, and you get all the credit for. But to me, when I go through your CV or whatever and kind of look at the other things that you've done since then, it's almost equally as impressive, especially for someone that's in the same space and everything else. So I guess in terms of some of the other gigs that you have done, the obvious one is London 2012 Olympics. Kind of what was your involvement with the Olympics, and kind of how do you look back on that as an experience?
So I worked for the show presentation team. So basically the team that put on the show around the game for the fans, for the arena. So not the broadcast, but all the stuff going on inside. Now I only joined the team. So there was a team that had been working on it for months and months and months before, and then I joined the team 6 weeks maybe before the Olympics. And I was just horrified at how unprepared they were, because I was basically coming in to be their basketball expert.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of these guys had worked on events and worked in television, and now they're charged with looking after the basketball. And day one, it's like, right, so it's 2 20-minute halves, right, Greg? And I'm like, how long you guys been working on this? But no, like I just basically was their basketball mind. I mean, they knew what they were doing technically and show calling and with the lights and whatever. I just had to advise them about the ins and outs of basketball, and also help with crowd participation ideas and stuff like that. So and then interviewing players afterwards, and it was getting played on the big screen. So I basically was there to be the show presentation team's basketball expert at the Olympics, and at the Paralympics I actually was the guy with the headset making the calls about, right, okay, this music now and this person goes on here. And actually it's quite nerve-wracking, some of that Olympic stuff, because before the game there's like a sequence of events and everything has to run exactly to time, because it's got to tip off exactly to time, because the whole world is watching. And so you're like 20 minutes before you've got this, 5 minutes before you've got the anthems, 2 minutes before you got this. And the nerves, like when you're responsible for playing out the correct national anthem and it's got to be exactly on time, and you push it and it doesn't play. So there were some hairy moments there, but that was again an amazing experience, the Olympics.
Was there any disasters behind the scenes with the basketball that kind of, I don't know, either you managed to cover up or maybe you didn't manage to cover up, that you kind of look back on like, oh, I can't believe that happened?
I don't think anything really went wrong at the Olympics. I think there was one point, I think Dizzy Rascal was meant to perform at one point, and there was a row because he was wearing an Adidas t-shirt, and so he didn't play. I think that was a thing, but I only heard about that secondhand because I wasn't directly involved in that.
Yeah.
But there was a bit of a faux pas the year before, so we did a test event in 2011 to make sure that everything was going to work for the Olympics. And at one of the games, it was Australia versus China, And so we had to play out the anthems, and we played out the Australian one, and then we played the second one, and the Chinese were looking at each other confused, and they came over and they were not happy because it wasn't their national anthem. And it turned out that what was it? Basically, instead of CNA being China, was it Canada or something? We played out the wrong national anthem, basically.
Oh, maybe you played Chile.
That's it.
Yeah,
it was Chile. It was CHI.
Yeah.
And the guy pushing the button thought CHI was Chile, and CNA actually was China. So
CHN's China.
There speaks the man of experience. But that caused a bit of a diplomatic incident that we had to smooth over. But no, at the Olympics, pretty much everything was smooth. And actually, it was amazing. Like, we had so many celebrities in the crowd, because obviously the basketball, in terms of star power, outside of Usain Bolt at the Olympics, star power, basketball is where all the stars are at. So, you know, we had, I think we had Obama in there at one point, and we had Schwarzenegger and David Beckham, and they were filming Fast and the Furious in London at that time. So Vin Diesel was at half the games, Ludacris was there. So yeah, it was full on though. Like, I didn't have a day off for like 2 months. But yeah, it was a good experience.
In terms of having the Great Britain basketball team there, you know, as someone that had been, on some level had been following them and sort of knowing what's been going on, like, what was that like for you to see a GB team at sort of the London Olympics? And I guess, did you feel like everyone else that it was going to be the opportunity to really help propel the sport? And yeah, kind of what were your feelings around that?
100%. So as someone who had been involved in the basketball scene for about 12 years by that point, at various levels, from streetball to helping Nike and the NBA with events, I, like most others, was a firm believer, this is our opportunity. Like, we're going to have the best players in the world here. They're going to be splashed all over the front pages and, you know, on TV and whatever. And then when the moment came, do you know what I think actually really hurt basketball? Was Britain did so well at that Olympics. They were winning medals every single day, that was getting all the press. Whereas in previous Olympics, you know, the basketball, again, because of the star power, had got so much attention with the UK press, because we were winning golds every single day. It didn't get any coverage, and I think that was a big part of why this legacy, this, you know, sudden explosion of interest in basketball that we all thought would happen, just didn't happen. I think it's because of the success of the wider GB team. Is my personal take on it. But in terms of seeing GB playing there and representing, I genuinely believe we could have got out of that group stage, and that the meltdown we had against Australia was you know, really sad. I mean, obviously, you know, Patty Mills is obviously an amazing player, but I genuinely think we could have got out of that group. Yeah. With the talent that we had that year.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about was just media coverage of the sport in general. You know, again, you're a journalist, so you're from that world, and then you're obviously from basketball, so you've seen over the course of however many years, I would guess that probably the media coverage of the sport hasn't changed a lot in the time since streetball.co.uk through to now, when you talk about mainstream media. Kind of, what's your perception of that, and why do you think basketball has struggled to break through in the UK?
Well, I mean, I would say it's fallen off. So when I first got into basketball in those mid-90s, you know, we used to have like a weekly little newspaper called Slam Dunk. You could buy FIBA magazine readily in the stores. I think there was another UK magazine. It was on terrestrial television, either ITV with Alton Byrd, or then Channel 4 did really good coverage of the NBA for a few years in the late 90s. Basically, the second Jordan three-peat they covered. So there was way more basketball coverage when I first got into it. And then it just and BBL as well. You know, BBL was on Saturday evenings on Sky Sports, and there would be thousands of people in the arena. And for one reason or another, it fell off. I think I don't fully know all the ins and outs. I'm not really a BBL guy, but my understanding is, and as someone that was working at ITV at the time, my understanding is, you know, ITV Digital came along with an offering that the BBL decided to go with and came off Sky. Obviously, ITV Digital flopped. then the BBL weren't on Sky anymore, so that had a negative impact on that league. I think the streetball phase came and went. That brought a lot of fresh people in who didn't necessarily like the structured organised sport, but like this cool culture, hip hop, urban thing. I think that came and went. But just in general, in this country, it's almost like football to the exclusion of almost everything else. With a bit of tennis and rugby and cricket here and there. But I also think there's a massive bias against American sports here. I just don't think the British media take American sports seriously. They think it's all hot dogs and pom-poms and cheerleaders, and they see it as a bit of a gimmick. And yeah, the NBA come to town. Well, they didn't come this year, did they?
They did come this year,
but not last year.
But they did come in January, but then that was going to be the last one.
Okay.
By the looks of things, yeah.
But it was always just like a gimmick and a fad, and as I'm sure all your serious viewers will recognize, half the coverage is like what football players are here in the crowd. So I just think American sports in general are not taken seriously over here, and it's football. And like I say, we had all hoped that 2012 would change that. It would really pique the interest, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah, obviously you worked at Sky for a long time and freelance, right? And I remember that kind of any time there was any type of basketball story, whether it was the NBA or to do with funding or whatever, you'd regularly be brought on as a pundit and stuff. Did you ever pitch basketball stories, and kind of when you were speaking to, I don't know, whoever it was that makes those editorial decisions, kind of what was the response? Was it that like, oh, it's basketball, like we don't care? Like,
yeah, I did. So at Sky News, I did sell a few basketball things. Like when FIBA were making the decision about whether to allow us to play in the Olympics. I got us to cover that. But it had to be really like big picture stuff. So I couldn't just sell it like, oh, it's the BBL finals this weekend. We should cover it because they didn't care. But if it was something wider like, oh, the Olympics or legacy or community or something, like you have to have and as anyone that writes press releases will know, you've got to find a peg that's going to make it interesting to a broad audience. So I managed to do that a few times at Sky News, and we got basketball on. But yeah, if it was just about the sport, I don't care.
Yeah, that's crazy. Do you ever see that changing? And if it is to change, how could it change? Like, what does the sport need to do collectively to be more attractive to the media?
God, if I had the answer, I would be trying to help. I mean, I think the way things had changed was back in the day before the internet. If it wasn't for that terrestrial television coverage, I wouldn't have got into it, and loads of people wouldn't have got into it. What you have now is you can access anything. You can get NBA League Pass, you can watch it, you can watch these things online. But the thing is, you have to already be a fan to do that. Without regular terrestrial coverage and in your face, it's here, you're not going to bring in anybody new. Now, how do we do that? I honestly don't know. I can't see sports editors anytime soon deciding to scrap some football coverage for some basketball coverage, unless like a team does something outlandish and like brings over like an NBA player, or someone's got to almost. I hate to say this, but someone's almost got to do a bit of a gimmick that's gonna be a hook for the media, because just like the BBL grinds on or whatever, from the editor's point of view, they're just not interested, and it's tragic. But unless there is some radical change, I can't see mainstream media putting it on anytime soon.
It's funny you said that probably the biggest thing that I've done a complete U-turn on in terms of my opinion is TV coverage, where I've always found a lot of the older heads, especially a lot of people involved with the BBL, it's like, we just need a TV deal. If we get a TV deal, it would change everything. And I've always, obviously I'm very pro-internet and pro-digital, and I'm always like, you've got access to a huge audience at any time. But funny enough, at the NBA game in January, I went and stood in the foyer for about 2 hours, just interviewing people and asking what made you come to the game, what's your interest in the NBA, and then asking them, do you follow the BBL? And of course, generally, pretty much all of them didn't. A lot of them were NBA fans, but were not interested in the BBL. And when I said to them, why not, or what would spark that interest? And they're like, well, I just don't know anything about it. Like, if it was on TV, and they all pointed to TV, 100%. It's like if they're on TV, and then that made me think like that actually is the thing that would make the difference, is having the terrestrial TV coverage.
100%. Even in this day of people consuming media on demand and Netflix and whatever, without it being front and center, a big portal, be it Sky, ITV, BBC, someone mainstream that's going to hit the millions and potentially attract some new ones. I don't see it. If you're already a basketball fan, cool, sick. I've got League Pass on my phone. I can watch every single game every night. Or if I want to go online and watch BBL stuff, I can do it. But you're not attracting anybody new. And it's like you say, unless it is front and center on a big platform television, that's where you get the new fans.
Do you think a once in a generation star from the UK, like actually from the UK system, come up from the UK that is NBA MVP level, global superstar status? Do you think that kind of thing could move the needle?
I think it could. Like if we had like a Luka Doncic, you see what he's doing in the NBA now, and like the interest he's generating back home. And there was a while when Lual was getting on TV, and the British media were picking it up, and there was a while where the line was he's Britain's most highly paid sports star. Yeah. And again, that's a hook. As someone that works in news, that's a hook that's going to make you put it on. So yeah, I think actually that might be our greatest hope, is if someone really makes it. And then that sparks a bit more interest. But then how do you then translate a Brit smashing it in the NBA to come watch the BBL? How do you make that transition? Is the tricky
tough one,
part,
isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's definitely a whole thing where it's like when people's reference point is the NBA, it almost sets them up for disappointment when they go to a BBL game and it's just not that experience, right?
That's the thing. Although I will say, I have brought so many people over the years to their first basketball game, and they're always, I would say 90% of the time, they're impressed. They're like, oh, like this is better than I thought. This is so much faster than I thought. So yeah, it's getting people to actually go and see it in the first place. And I think if you put on a half decent show, you can get some fans. But it's the chicken and the egg. How do you get them there in the first place?
The other thing I did want to touch upon was the magazine. So started as Fade Away, and then evolved into MVP. Kind of what was the thinking behind that, and I guess what's the backstory behind it all?
So I got approached in 2009. So by this point, it's been a couple of years since I've kind of stopped doing the internet stuff. But I still had my hand in. I did Kobe interview. I did some LeBron stuff. I'm still doing bits and pieces with Nike and the NBA here and there. And I got approached by a guy called Jake, who was a photographer, who had previously, I think, helped set up a hip-hop magazine. And he wanted to set up a basketball magazine. He was working with a guy in the UK basketball community, and he said, you should do a basketball magazine, and you should talk to this guy, Greg, about being in charge of the content. So he got in touch, and I was like, yeah, let's give it a go. So I bought in Mark Woods, my best mate Mark Woods, who's always quick to comment on my clothing on social media. So I bought him. Like obviously Mark Woods was the in terms of being a serious basketball journalist.
He's the one.
He's the one. He lived up in still does, to my knowledge, live up in Edinburgh. But I brought him in as the assistant editor because I knew he would write so many of the UK articles. He had so many of those connections. I knew I would write more of the lifestyle stuff and the NBA stuff. And basically, it was a team of four of us. So me and Mark on the editorial side. Jake would handle all the business side of it, all the ad sales, getting all the photos, dealing with the printers, and then a guy called Harry, who would be the designer, who in InDesign or whatever program he was using, would put everything together. Now, I knew it was going to be pretty decent, but when I got that first copy in my hand, the quality of it as a product was so good. It was better than most magazines in the store. It was almost like a hard copy.
Thick, yeah.
Certainly at first. Certainly, we did start trimming our costs as we went down the line. But those first several issues, embossed, Fade Away, embossed logo. it was such a quality product. I was amazed. So we were at first available in Borders, and then Borders went bust in the recession. And actually, funnily enough, the reason why Jake came to me to set this thing up was he ran a photography business, and he was worried that the recession was going to hit his business. So he was like, right, I've got to diversify. I've got to set up a magazine. So the recession in 2009 was actually what sparked Fadeaway and MVP. So when the first one came back and the quality was so good, and it was flying off the stores in Borders, like sold out, and people were emailing like, Borders are sold out, how can we get it? We were like, oh wow, we're onto something. So we ended up doing a deal with WH Smith for a bit, but then we realized actually what made the most business sense was to give the magazine away for free, because then we could do like 5,000 per issue. If we got I contacted junior and senior clubs all around the UK, and we're like, give us your address, we'll send you 10-20 copies. So that meant we had we could distribute 5,000. So we could go to our advertisers and say, right, rather than selling 2,000, we're going to give away 5. So bigger audience, up your mind. And we had adverts from big brands, Adidas, K1X, 2K, ESPN were our official media partners. In fact, that media partnership actually was what allowed the magazine to continue for as long as it did. I think we ran it for like 5 years. But that was a real learning experience, because I'd never run a magazine, and not so much from an editorial side, because writing stories, that's something I'd always done, but the business side of it and the technicalities of it, and I need it in CMYK, and I need it this many DPI, and I'm talking about like resolution of photos here, and just the business of doing things. It taught me a lot. There were so many times where I wanted to jack it in, because we made enough to keep it going, and we got to do some really cool stuff like travel and trips with Nike and stuff like that. We didn't really get paid from it, and I was in relationships and I was working a lot, and there were so many times I wanted to jack it in. But then when I took my current job that I work now, like a full-time staff job, I had to lock it off. So that was at the beginning of 2015. But we had a 5-6 year run, which for a magazine is not
Why
bad.
did it switch from Fadeaway to MVP?
A lot of people didn't understand what Fadeaway meant. To be fair, a lot of people didn't understand what MVP meant either. But yeah, we just and also we kind of broke away from one of the guys who had helped set it up, and we just wanted a bit of a refresh and a rebrand to slightly distance ourselves from some stuff that had gone down. But as MVP, it was certainly known more as MVP. We did more issues as MVP, and it was as MVP that we were sending out 5,000 per issue. Yeah. So way more people were reading it. But yeah, like we did some cool stuff, and people enjoyed it. And like I say, I can't take any credit for the quality of it, but that was always what stood out to me. A couple of the covers, we did one where LeBron had gone to the Heat, and then everybody went to the Lakers, like they got Dwight Howard and Steve Nash and everything. And we did one that was like Star Wars was like the title, and it was like LeBron holding a star in space, and like all the stars were like embossed silver coming out of the cover. And every time it came back, I'd be like, Jake, like, how are you doing this? But also, how much are you spending on the printing, bruv? Like, this is why we're not making any money. But no, it was, and to be fair to Jake, he was just all about the quality. He didn't care about basketball. He just wanted to produce a really, really quality product, and we did. 5-6 years we did, and it was a cool thing to do. And
obviously MVP lives on, and I'm assuming you're completely cut off from it now. Yeah. And Mark Woods is sort of the head of the show.
That's all him. Yeah.
So when did you officially step away from that?
When I joined my job that I do now, I took a staff job. I think technically I wasn't really allowed to be having any like side income things or anything like that, so I had to lock everything off. But I was fine. By that point I was like 37 years old or whatever. So I was like, right, focus.
Could you ever see yourself making a return to basketball in some capacity? Or do you think that's just a stage of your life that's done now, and you look back on it very fondly, and it's created a lot of memories for you and a lot of other people, but you don't want to be involved or do you think it could be a possibility?
I think it's very unlikely. I think I'm at a stage now where, I'm at a point in my career where, I've come quite far. I live in Dubai. I'm not even in the ends anymore to be covering stuff. And I just can't see what would come along that would offer a stable enough, long-term enough, high-paying enough thing that I would want to go and do it. And I'll be honest with you as well, Sam, there were times when I was fully in the basketball thing where I would take 2 months or 7 months in one case off of doing the news thing. I was being paid to do basketball full time. And you know what? When you're being paid to do it full time, it starts feeling like a job. Like, honestly, there were times where I was like, oh, this is long. Like, I'm contracted to get this clip done by Tuesday and I really can't be bothered. So I would say, they say do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. It's not entirely true, because when you have to do the thing that you love, it does become a bit of a grind. So that's why I did do it for like 11 years. I juggled the two, which is a long time. I wouldn't have done it that long if I didn't like doing it. But I loved the variety. I loved having the news thing, but then also having the basketball thing. So to revert to your question, I think it's very unlikely that I'd end up doing something basketball related, because my job is so full on that I can't take anything else on. I don't think I would be allowed to anyway, as per my contract. I don't live in the UK anymore. I'm out the game, to be honest, and unless it's offering me a long-term career path, I can't see why I would do it.
So I guess to wrap up, because we're coming on over an hour and a half here. When you talk about legacy and kind of the legacy of streetball.co.uk and I guess your basketball related career, what do you think the legacy of the site is? Like, what do you think has meant to people? And I guess, what do you want it to be? What do you want people to see it as?
I think legacy, I just think it provided a lot of entertainment for a lot of people for several years. The stories people used to tell me of sixth form colleges like blocking streetball.co.uk because it used to cause so much riots in the library. In the early days, before people had the internet at home, they'd all download the clips and, they'd be shouting and screaming in the library. And honestly, so many people used to tell me their school or their college had blocked streetball.co.uk. So, it provided so much entertainment. It provided so much banter, like the beef on the message boards. Who's, Westminster Warriors versus Ealing Tornadoes versus Middlesbrough College versus, like, that was all fun and banter. And, I'd say we kind of made little mini celebrities out of a bunch of people who became, known on the scene. And I think they probably enjoyed that. I enjoyed getting to travel and everything. But in terms of legacy, I definitely think I don't think it's gassing it to say it was a movement. It was like a movement, a culture that captured people's imaginations for a few years. And like I say, provided a lot of entertainment. Like, I don't think it's much deeper than that. It had its time. It came and went. I loved doing it. The guys that were with me loved doing it. We had some really cool times. And, it lives on in grainy clips on YouTube that you can watch from 2002 and see what we were doing when we were almost 20 years younger.
That's a perfect place to leave it. Greg, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you.